Good evening, everyone. Hope you find yourself safe and you find yourself healthy. I want to thank Judy for inviting me to speak with you this evening. Also, I want to just share with you how important it is for me to be able to relay this information in the most accessible way possible. I know that oftentimes people just either convey information or share information in many different ways. So I hope that I've be able to convey this information to you as clear and easy as possible. I'm really excited to see that you have a really neat calendar full of different topics coming ahead after this one. So it's good to obtain a little bit of different topics, but I'm going to tell you one tip that works for me. I just want to get one thing that I could, even if it's just one thing that I can get from each conversation that you have with someone, or if it's the one thing that you will learn from a particular presentation. It's like building a wellness toolbox, right? So this toolbox will have all your little tips and skills and tools that you're going to need to just be that self-advocate. So just keep that in mind, okay? So as Judy presented, I'm Rosy Tellez. I do work here with Disability Rights California, and I'm in the Peer Self-Advocacy unit. In this unit, we all identify as being individuals with a disability and what we call lived experience with a mental health disability. So here I go to present to you this topic today, know your rights and how to advocate for them. So my name is Rosy Tellez, as I mentioned. Disability Rights California.
And we're not seeing the slides yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not sharing them with you yet?
I took
Share
it away
screen.
from you. So.
Okay, so let's see. Share screen.
And while I'm doing that, please, everyone, use the chat function to ask questions during the presentation. And I had sent out, Rosie had sent me the slides earlier today, so I shared those with you. I'm going to post a link shortly.
Okay, am I sharing these with you now?
Oh, good.
Okay. There you go. Okay, so Disability Rights California is one of the largest protection and advocacy systems in the whole nation. Let me bring my volume down a little bit if that's okay. The mission that we have in the agency is to advocate, educate, investigate, and litigate to advance and protect the rights of all Californians with disabilities. As I mentioned, in our Peer Self-Advocacy unit, we facilitate groups in mental health facilities and state hospitals. We provide trainings to people.
Yeah.
All right. We provide these trainings to people with mental health disabilities, also to family members. It's very important that we know that our family understands where we're coming from our perspective, and to service providers to inform them about legal rights and the access to services, because that is our right, okay? So I help participants develop self-advocacy skills, strategies to advocate for your own goals and services. That's what I'll be sharing with you tonight. I do have a disclaimer here that during this training, I will not be providing you legal advice. All this information will be from the perspective of individuals living with a disability. So nothing said in this training is confidential. We do ask if you have a particular or unique issue you would like to share with our experts regarding your legal rights. You're welcome to call our 1-800 number. I'll be sharing this number with you later after this presentation. But the number is 1-800-776-5746. Remember, you can make a note of it now. If not, I'll be sharing this information again at the end of the presentation. Moving on to the next slide. So here we have our training agenda for today. We're going to be talking about what is self-advocacy, why is it important, what steps towards self-advocacy do we need to take, and also how do we self-advocate and put this into action. Here we go. So a question I have for you tonight is, what is self-advocacy? Well, we talk about direct advocacy and self-advocacy. What is the difference? Well, direct advocacy means one thing and self-advocacy is another. It's like comparing apples and oranges.
I got a new one that's like hard to steal.
So we're going to be asking ourselves, asking someone to do something for you, is that self-advocacy or is that direct advocacy? Or being your own advocate and doing it yourself with the help of others if needed, is that advocacy or self-advocacy? Well, if you guessed this right, asking someone to do something for you is direct advocacy. But if you want to say in it, then you would be being your own self-advocate and you can be doing it yourself, but with the help of others. That's the ultimate goal, right? To be a self-advocate. So to be your own advocate, that would be in order for you to have control and you dictate and you direct which direction you want to go. So you direct and maintain your well-being. That's when you let your voice be heard, right? Self-advocacy empowers you to speak for yourself and actively participate in the decisions affecting your life. This is where a lot of people say, yes, you are very confident and you're empowered to be able to speak for yourself and what you want for you. So there's a few steps to take there in order to do that. We would have to be a successful advocate starting with one step, and that is having to know yourself, right? I'm going to tell you how. You will want to know what are your strengths. And when we talk about strengths, let me look at my little note. When we talk about strengths, we all have unique ones, right? So some of us are able to keep track of things. Some of us have good communication skills. So we have a good way of talking to other people. What about those few people that have a way of putting things in order? I may need help with that sometimes. Having to organize, that's a great strength to have. So then we go on to the next one, which is you will need to know what are your needs. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? Also, you would want to identify what are your interests and what are your goals before we can begin to advocate for your own rights. When we talk about goals, you may hear people talk about short-term goals, long-term goals, but above all, we know that if we want to accomplish a goal, it takes a few steps. If you have questions, I'll be addressing them a little later. I don't have access to seeing them yet, okay? So I will have to go on to say that you decide what you want to change or accomplish. It's like being in a crossroads. It's like, which direction do you want to go? Well, only you know, right? Nobody knows you more than yourself. That's what I always tell people. It's like, I've got to have some say in certain things because I only know what works for me, right? So this is your plan. Through self-advocacy, you will learn new strategies. How about some new resources and also information? Oftentimes, we may not feel comfortable asking other people, but it's good to ask other people and start building your little information bank. To develop your own plan, work with others to achieve your goals. Like I was sharing earlier, it's always good to ask. If you're trying to make a move and you're not quite sure which direction to go, it's good to find out from others, see what their experience has been like. So here we are. Here's some steps toward self-advocacy. There's 7 of them, okay? And I will explain them and break them down for you. So the first one is define the issue and decide what you need. Then you want to know what your rights are. That's really important. There's a lot of rights out there to protect us. Develop an action plan to get what you want. Then you want to learn a new skill and maybe ask people to help you. Carry out your plan. Then don't be shy about evaluating how you did. It's always good to look back and see how well we did. And the seventh is maybe we can adjust something to your strategy if we need to, right? So I'm gonna break it down for you. This might sound like a bit much, but we're gonna explore this together right now. Oops. So first, as I said, we want to define the problem. So we want to be clear. Sometimes they're not necessarily problems. They're just little issues and we may need to clear, right? So be clear about the issues or problems, or be clear about what it is that is in the way or something that you need to resolve, okay? Know the laws regarding that issue. Also, think about how would you like to resolve, how you would like to resolve them. What are some pros and what are some cons? We have to weigh out options sometimes, and we're going to talk about how we do that a little later, so bear with me. Here we have an example. Suppose we want to live on our own. Suppose we want to get a place to live. We have to kind of process it through a little bit. So we want to talk about what areas of town we want to live in. Also, something very important, how can we afford it, right? And then you may want to make yourself a list of what are the things you're going to need if you want to live somewhere. Also, a fact check that gets me all the time. How is my credit score? Because this is something that the landlords and people that manage properties are going to want to look at. And there's always fees involved with that. So they might charge a little fee to look into what your credit looks like, because without this credit, they want to know whether they'll be able to trust you enough to live in their place. It's like a mandatory thing. They have to check our credit. So we can do a little bit of homework on how we're doing with that first. Also, if we need help, don't be shy and ask a friend. What about if we want to go to school? We want to ask ourselves, what do you want to study? How about where is the school located? Or nowadays we can do all this virtually, but we have to sign an application, submit to enroll. What does this enrollment process looks like? How long does it take? So we have to kind of do a little bit of footwork on that end, okay? We have to prepare ourselves to say, okay, if this is what I want to study, where do I go? How do I process this whole enrollment process? And if there's any fees and costs, it says here, if there's a cost, what programs may pay for them? And what do I need to do to enroll? So when we talk about programs, some of you may already be familiar with the Department of Rehabilitation. That could be a funding source to pay for something you're interested in learning, for a new skill. Or if you want to get a job, the Department of Rehabilitation is always a good source for when you say, I'm interested in trying to explore the job arena. What does that look like for you? You may want to ask yourself, do you know what kind of job you would like? Do you need some skills or training to do that job? And also, more or less, what area you're trying to work at? Where is this job going to be located? Right now with COVID, we find that a lot of jobs are being lost, but we also find that there's some other areas of employment that are really spiking up. So we may have to do our homework a little bit on that. Do you have transportation for the job? That's another very important question. If we don't, we can explore. If we don't have the opportunity to catch a bus somewhere, we may live in an area where transportation's not readily available. Okay, what transportation services are available in my city? Or can I benefit from, like, say, Access Paratransit, right? And they're also having some restrictions right now with this whole COVID situation to make sure everyone is safe. So those are some examples. The second step is know your rights. So if you're a person with a disability, are there rights to protect you? Believe it or not, there are. So laws you need to know. I'm going to tell you which ones those are. I'm going to be brief. There's 3 of them that I could think off the top of my head. So a lot of us may be familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act. I also do a presentation on that so we can understand it a little better. We can always plan for another presentation down the road with Judy, and you can have me back to present on that if that's a topic of interest. Also, how about the Fair Housing Act and also the Rehabilitation Act? So let me give you a little bit of history here. The Rehabilitation Act was enacted in 1973, but it was so broad and needed some modifications that further down the road, a lot of our pioneer advocates made some systemic changes. And that's when the American with Disabilities Act came about in 1990, the ADA. And that protects us from discrimination, from anywhere from housing, employment, public access, and also housing. So it's really broad. It has 5 different titles that I can break down for you, but that's a conversation for another day. Let's keep talking about your rights. And here we go into step 3. Then we go into develop an action plan. Once you define the issue you want to resolve and select a solution, you need to develop an action plan. So how does that work? You want to write down what the problem is or the situation, what you plan to do about it, and how you want to resolve it. So first we say, okay, this is what I need to work on. This is how I can go about it. But what do I really want, right? Okay, let's explore that a little bit. So the action plan items, you can have a backup plan in case you need to change your strategy. It's like when we're going on a road trip, right? If you're going in a certain direction and you may be flexible enough to say, okay, I can either do a U-turn somewhere, or is it okay to kind of detour a little bit? You decide. Ultimately, you want to accomplish a certain goal. So do you have that freedom and flexibility to say which direction you want to go? So decide what issues you're willing to compromise on, okay? The 4th step, you want to learn new skills. Ask people to help you regarding communication skills. Sometimes we need to sharpen up a little bit about when we want something. How can we be clear and be polite and really share with a person what we want to say? I sometimes have a little trouble with that. How about assertiveness skills? We want to be confident about what we want, right? Because we're the ones that want to resolve this issue. So you want to be assertive, but sometimes we may have to do a little bit of research to make sure that we know what our options are, okay? Also, in learning these new skills, we may have to incorporate learning how to negotiate. So you want to know who's going to be doing what? And is there a timeline that you might want to have this accomplished by? Or say, okay, so if someone's going to help you, what are they going to do? If we're calling a particular center or agency for help, it's like, okay, what can they help us with and what do we need to do? Because we're the ones that want the results, so we want to make sure we're you know, kind of communicating and negotiating. Okay, you're going to do what and what am I going to do? Okay, and when do you need this by? You know, kind of sort out those questions for yourself. Also, organization skills. Like I said, I'm not the best organizer. I would tell people at my previous job, I said, I'm organized. You just wouldn't know it from the looks of my desk, right? And I would say, well, I have order within my disorder because only I knew where I had certain things, but nobody would know it by the looks of it, right? But that's not always a good thing. It gives people the bad impression. So organizational skills might be something we can learn. Always remember, don't be so hard on yourself. You can practice, practice, practice. Let's go to step number 5. You want to carry out this action plan. So you want to gather your information and support for your solution. Remember what I said. It's always good to either jot it down, or a lot of those who are really techy, you can keep track on developing yourself either audio notes on your mobile device, or you know, kind of drafting yourself a little list. So you can gather all this information. You want to keep this log of your activities also. When you're keeping your log of activities, you want to date those logs. Oh, this day I called, that different day I did this, the following day I called back to, you know, check on how things are going with that situation. So keep this little log. What did you do? Okay. Seek support for your peers, family, friends, staff, and others. Also, show that your plan is workable and supported by others. I can tell you a lot of our friends, family, or other people are willing to help us. We may be the ones to be shy to ask for the help. But remember, you can be assertive and be confident that you can carry out this plan yourself. I can tell you if I did it, I know anyone can do it. I was always so fearful about which move I was going to make. Here's a couple strategies I'm going to share with you. Here's an action plan strategy. So you can talk to others about effective ways to approach people, right? We talked about communication skills. You can ask for that help. It's like, hey, I want to make this move. How do you think I should talk to so-and-so? You can always, just a simple question, keep it simple for yourself. Then you can rehearse or role play what you are going to say. You can always ask someone, hey, how does it sound if I call this place and tell them this? Well, they'll be more likely to tell you yay or nay. Also, be prepared to negotiate. Remember, we're the interested party. We want something to be done. So we're going to have some responsibility on our side. Oftentimes, we may want others to do certain things for us, but if you want the ultimate solution and you want to resolve things, you may have to be the one to kind of take on a little bit more of that responsibility to say, okay, I can do this, but you can do that, or ask someone to help you with some other thing. Don't be shy. I keep saying that a lot because that really helps. Timing and timeliness are important, keeping track of time. I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've helped my fellow peers with certain situations that had to do with this timeline. Let me give you an example. If we're people with disabilities and we may get a letter from Social Security Administration, don't do what I did. Grab the envelope and put it in a drawer. Because sometimes it's so overwhelming that we just like, oh, I'll deal with it later, okay? And guess what? It says you have to respond within 10 days or 30 days or 60 days from the date of this letter. Guess what? It's not from when we received it. It's from when they printed the date on that form. I'll find myself in big trouble most times. So I don't want you to fall on that trap. So keep track of when do you need to do something, or how soon do you need to apply for something else, or keep track of dates. That's really, really important. More strategies here. Document your efforts, your questions before talking with someone about your issue. Document your questions. Also, remember what I said about dates and times, and it's really important that when you call an agency, you can take a name of a person. Oftentimes, they may not give you a name. They may just give you like a representative number, okay? And if you have, some remembering issues like I do, I have to remember, it's like, okay, can you please remind me, once the whole conversation took place and maybe I took a few notes, it's like, can you please remind me, you said this. What was that about? And then they're really kind about repeating what they said and say, okay, I'm just making some notes to make sure I can follow through. And oftentimes people are really kind to go back and tell you, okay, well, this is what you need to do. And they'll tell you in the 1, 2, 3s and ABCs of what you have to do. So if your request is denied, remember, oftentimes, if we're trying to accomplish something and it's not going to work, you can challenge that decision. Okay, if they're, say for instance, oftentimes if you're applying for something or you have to get a response back from a certain agency or it's not favorable, don't be discouraged. There's so many ways to go about something that you're like, well, something didn't quite go my way. Well, let me tell you, we can always challenge that decision the right way. Okay, we can always, if we don't have a paper stating why it was denied, then you can get support to understand, okay, why was this not favorable? Then usually we can, it says here file a complaint, but in nice terms is we can appeal this decision, right? When we appeal the decision, we have an opportunity to ask why this was denied. And then oftentimes they'll tell you why, and then they'll tell you what you need to submit or what you need to do in order for it to have it appealed, right? So they'll look into it a little further and see if they can resolve that situation. Now, if you follow the whole process, because with everything, there's policies, there's procedures, there's protocols, meaning there's ways to do it. So there's like a little pathway like I have on the screen. You may have to do one thing and then wait for a response and then get another and then go on to the next thing and the following, right? So if it doesn't get resolved, you can go up to filing what they call a lawsuit. We want to avoid it, but we can ultimately go ahead and file it once we get to a point that something doesn't quite resolve and you have all this evidence that you are in the right. This is more like when we're advocating for a particular disability benefit or whatnot, or you find some sort of discrimination somewhere. But this is when we talk about being assertive, knowing your rights, right, and following certain steps. So let me move on to the next one. Here we're going to go into step number 6. You want to evaluate how you did with all these previous 5 steps. I'll tell you why. You want to review it to know how you did. Maybe there's something you can do different. And if you didn't get what you wanted, what steps do you need to take to be successful? This is where you want to evaluate. Oh, well, I managed the situation this way, but yeah, you're right. Maybe I can change something. That's really an opportunity to start making changes. And oftentimes, if it's a little bit too much, like I say, sometimes things get a little bit much for me, I ask someone to kind of review something with me. Say, hey, can I ask your opinion? Can you sit with me and help me? Maybe there's something I don't see on here. And then some other person may give you their opinion, or they'll be able to catch something that we probably couldn't catch. Okay? Also, select a solution and develop a different plan. It's always okay to remember what I said. We're the ones deciding to go in certain directions. You can take detours, U-turns, 3-point turns, you name it, right? Just so we can try to figure out what we want. Alrighty, step 7. We can adjust our strategies. I tell you, don't be too hard on yourself when you say this didn't quite work. Well, remember what I said. If there is a will, there's different ways. Okay, so what worked and what didn't work? What could you have done differently? Ask others for suggestions. Is there a different solution? Is there a compromise that will still meet your needs? Oftentimes there's a give and take. Remember we talked about those negotiation skills. Maybe you may have to do a little something, or someone else may have to do something, but you are ultimately the one in that circle of who's making those decisions, because you're the one that wants something. Okay, you could tell people this is what I want, and if I have your support and your help, you can achieve it. So you can always, change a few things around. So I have a scenario here for you. So what this screen reads, it says, Janet lives in an apartment at Rancho Amigos. So she has anxiety, which we sometimes may all be dealing with some kind of anxiety, or right now with COVID, there's been quite a spike with anxiety. But guess what? Janet lives alone. She wants to get a dog to provide her comfort and companionship. The apartment complex has a no pets rule. Some of you may be familiar with this situation, right? A lot of apartment buildings or a lot of landlords say no pets rule. So say when the landlord finds out, he says she'll have to move out. That's really scary. You're telling someone who lives alone and it's dealing with a little bit of anxiety, and they have this rule, and now she's being told she has to move out. That could be pretty scary. So what could Janet do to advocate for herself? Well, I'm going to break this down for you. For those of us who may or may not have a service animal or an emotional support animal, right? Oftentimes, individuals may have a service animal. So if there is such a rule in apartment buildings, a service animal is not a pet. It falls under a different criteria. This is where I tell you we have to learn our rights, right? We have to get this information. Well, I'm kind of giving you this breakdown. So technically, it's not a pet. It is a support or a service animal. So she's protected under the ADA. I'm giving you that tip right now. Then, once the landlord finds out, and he says that she has to move out, then she doesn't have to worry. Because, well, I know it's scary at the beginning, but the ADA protects her. She's being discriminated against, right? If she was to prove that she's in need of the support animal for companionship and comfort, and suppose it's a service animal, and then she's got all this other things lined up, that she knows what her rights are, then she could advocate for herself and she may not have to move out, okay? Oftentimes, then the landlord can come back and say, well, we need you to provide some kind of deposit for your pet. And I say quote unquote. Well, technically, because it is not a pet, there's no fees attached. But we can learn all this through different training. So through our peer self-advocacy team, we have many different topics we talk about. We talk about, let me think about this, SSI, we talk about SSDI, we also talk about your rights to accommodations in employment. We talk about if you can benefit or how to navigate Department of Rehabilitation services. We also talk about building these self-advocacy skills in more detail. So there's so many other topics we can always schedule ahead with Judy, and I can come back and share with you. So you can learn a little bit about your rights, a little bit at a time. Remember what I said, you can always pick up one tip from each conversation you have with someone about advocacy, or pick up one more skill or tool from each workshop that you attend to. So don't get overwhelmed with all this information. Just pick up one thing that's going to help you, that you're going to remember. And before you know it, you're going to have quite a few tools in that advocacy toolbox. So let me remind you, don't give up. It is important not to give up if your first attempt doesn't work. You may have to stop your plan and try other strategies to get what you want. Right now, we find that there might be a lot of barriers because of COVID. First of all, because it's not easy to just walk in somewhere and get help, right? You may have to be on the phone. It may take time. The calls may get disconnected. You may submit an application online and that may not work out. You can always work something around what you want to accomplish. The important thing is to remember to keep trying, do not give up, okay? Don't be discouraged. I have quite a bit of resources here on the screen, such as ADA Basics, also American Association of People with Disabilities. There's a lot of resources there. Disability Rights Education and a Defense Fund. Also National Association for Rights of Protection and Advocacy. And the National Empowerment Center. Also PLAN. The PLAN is an acronym for Planned Lifetime Advocacy Network. And Road to Freedom. I know Judy will make these resources available to you should you request for them, or I'm not sure, Judy, if you send it to them already, but these will be available to you. Also other resources. I shared a little bit about housing, right? So there are housing discrimination fact sheets on our materials. We have a lot of publications that are available to you in various languages and in alternative formats as well. I'm quite the advocate to say we need information in alternative formats because I have a lot of friends who are of the low vision, blind, deaf, or hard of hearing community. So I want to make sure that they have the benefit of their right to equal access to information. So that's a big passion of mine. Also, psychiatric services and emotional support animals. I spoke a little bit on that, and I think you might have had a presentation on that already. If not, we can always come back and speak on that. And reasonable accommodations under Section 8. We also have a presentation on reasonable accommodations for employment, and I can tell you, in detail how to navigate that. So with that, I want to open it up. I see that some questions might have been happening as I was presenting. Let me see how I can have access to those.
Most of them are comments, but let's see if there are any questions. There was a comment about them from Myra, who wants us to do the ADA presentation, and that would be useful.
Yes, I'm more than happy, Judy, to come back and do that. So the ADA will be talking about the 5 different titles. We'll do it in the same format we did today. We have a presentation with slides and all that could be available to you. And so yes, we can coordinate that.
Okay, so Tom asked, is it easier to afford an apartment or a house?
Okay. An apartment, I would say it's well, let me tell you, I've been looking for an apartment and I haven't been able to look for something that's quite reasonable. A lot of there's something to know about housing too. And I will share this with you at a different time if we have an opportunity to talk about that, Judy, regarding housing. Because I don't want you to be misled by information out there that can tell you about, there's certain things down there. You'll hear about low-income housing. You'll hear about affordable housing. And most of these apartments would have a long wait list. And there's different eligibility criteria that we have to meet in order for us to benefit from that. I can say if you have like a case manager, a particular agency that's backing you up, or a particular program that says, yes, indeed, I'm working with this person, they're reliable, they keep track of their, their monies, right? And also that you may have some support to also keep you housed. It's more likely that a network of housing providers work with you, okay? And the only reason I tell you that, it's because I come from working in the independent living center field. I worked in the independent living center for on and off since 2007, and then I was pretty steady from 2011 till early this year. So that would be one of our biggest issues, having to find housing for our peers and helping them understand how to navigate all that. So we can have a conversation for that. Now, when it comes to houses, there's some programs out there that help with a down payment, and also it doesn't interfere if you have SSI, right? As long as you live in your home, but you can't have any outside income. So there's a lot to it, but I can say what's affordable would be something that you can work out. I can tell you that at one point in time for me, I didn't want to live by myself. So I was okay with sharing, what do they call that? Like collaborative housing or shared housing. And it was okay for me to be in a supported environment with other people in the home, with other peers. So it's really it's an individual decision, is really what you want to navigate. So I won't say something is harder than other. It just depends what opportunities are out there and what agencies are providing certain supports for you to be able to live where you want to live.
A quick question on that, Rosie. What agency would you recommend they work with to find affordable housing?
Well, I can tell you that individuals that have some of this information from their local area, say if you're in Orange County, your independent living center or any type of disability resource center in your area. And the reason why I say that, because they may oftentimes be on listings that provide information of what's readily available, and they're provided what are some of the application process people may have to go through, and also they're being told what type of population can probably benefit the soonest.
Okay, and just so you guys know, I'm working on the calendar for next year, and I do have a couple people coming in to talk about housing, but there's some additional questions here for you, Myra. Is there a place that's best to go to learn about your rights, and so you know it's reliable information and applies to our state?
Yes, I can tell you that Disability Rights California, if you were to go to our website, which is listed on the screen here, is disabilityrightsca.org. So do I need to spell that for you, or some of you is everyone on computer, Judy, or is some people joining us by phone?
No, everyone's pretty much on computer, and they'll have access to this presentation. But
okay, so on our website, Judy, when individuals access our website, you can go down to events, and then there's a section that says webinars right there directly on the, it'll say webinars, it'll say past webinars. You can go to our past webinars and you'll have access to the slides of the presentation, and it's available not only in the slide but also auditory. So you can always download the presentation when someone has presented, it's been recorded. Or if you go to the same disabilityrightsca.org website, you go down to publications, and there's tiles on the help, advocacy, they'll have housing, mental health, any type of, issue that someone may have, and it would give them the opportunity to learn about that particular information. You click it, it's available in other languages, and like I said, alternative formats. And it's all related to California. Our website is up to date. Can you hear me? It has information about fires, COVID, and anything that's related to up to the minute information when it comes to, anything that relates to our rights. So I would strongly say, confidently, you feel free to reach out to our website and you will be informed of up to the minute information and your rights that relate to us Californians.
So Rosie, there's a few more questions here. One is, how can I get an emotional support dog? Seems like a whole other webinar.
Okay. Yes, it is. It is. I can tell you, you can go to our website, and we have a whole PowerPoint like this one specifically on that. How can you obtain one and what is necessary? But I can tell you, either a service animal, a support animal, there's quite a few things to consider, and I think Debbie was the one that presented to you before. She's made a presentation regarding that as to what are your rights. I don't think we went into details to how to obtain one, but what is needed for, and what rights protect you on having one.
But
So I don't think I'd have information directly to how to obtain one. Mm-hmm.
But Rosie, that's a perfect example of how someone would use the steps to advocacy that you described, is come up with a plan, do your homework, do your research, get some help from other people. That's one where if it's something that's important to you, you need to come up with your plan. I think your presentation provides a good framework for doing that.
There's quite a few things to consider, it's like, where do I live? Is it okay with landlord for me to have that here, or the parents, or family? How are you going to caretake for your emotions? So, yeah, there's a lot to kind of really pull from that. But I hope I wish you much success on that, Helen. Hope you do obtain one, and if that's something that you desire and you have the support for it, let us know how that goes.
Okay, there's a question on Section 8 housing. Is there a good publication that goes into details on Section 8 housing?
Let me think on that one. On our housing material, we talk about what your rights are when it relates to housing. It may not go into detail about breaking down the different types, but it may tell you what your rights are regarding each one of those. And it kind of breaks down who might have something that will talk about that would be the Housing Rights Center, because the Housing Rights Center advocates for people, not just with disabilities, but all tenants. And they also have information about landlords. So it's like, what do they call that? Housing 101 workshops. And they would probably be available to Judy to come and speak to the group as well. So I would confidently say there's more information, maybe specific to what you're looking for. As to breaking this down would be the Housing Rights Center.
Okay. There's quite a few now. There was a question about someone who wants to know about getting a high school diploma. And I'm looking at this next one, which is really long. I don't know if you have any information on a high school diploma. Let's see.
Okay, let's see here. Regarding a high school diploma, oftentimes it would be the unified school district of where the person attended school at that would have these particular records. And if you contact the, is that what the question was about, Judy? Of
You
how
know,
to
it was kind of how to do it. I think it was fairly broad.
Okay, I tell you that when I needed to navigate my high school diploma, I had to go to the what is it, like here is LAUSD, right? So I would have to go to the school district of where I attended high school to start going back and try to navigate that. I know sometimes people may be out of state, so you may have to contact that, but I understand there's a lot of information available online nowadays. So if you go online and you just put it on the keyword, trying to get my transcripts, or how do
I think he's actually trying to complete the requirements to have a high school diploma, this particular person.
Okay, so it's regarding education.
Yes.
I can honestly tell you that regarding education and having to complete it, right now there's a lot of programs that are available online, and they offer for you, it's no longer called, I remember back in my days, it was called differently. Nowadays, I think it's a program out there called 5 Keys, that if we're adults above the age of 18, they help us, there's a California program that helps us navigate into obtaining that high school diploma. It's some type of equivalency type of procedure on saying, okay, you won't quite get your diploma, but if you follow these certain steps to acquire the credits needed, then you're able to, they'll help you through. But I think it's look into the, what is it, the adult school nearest you and see what type of programs they offer. And don't be shy to say, I'm a person with a disability, so you will need accommodations. Therefore, they're able to help you further in navigating this. Oftentimes, they have a disabled students office, and you have peers like ourselves helping fellow peers and helping them navigate that. So it's not a scary process. I wish you success with that.
I think the Housing Rights Center is in LA, but there's a Fair Housing Council of Orange County, and that's in Santa Ana.
Okay. And remember, a lot of these centers and organizations have virtual workshops as well. So no matter where they're located, you may be able to access that information. Thank you, Judy, for sharing the Fair Housing Council of Orange County.
Yeah.
And there is, you know, Dale McIntosh in Orange County, an independent living center out there too, that, you know, having to connect with them, or a disability rights resource center, they'd be able to help you navigate that as well. And we have other units through Disability Rights California that will help you also in connecting with the right entities if we don't happen to have those levels of support within our agency.
Okay, are there any more questions for Rosy?
Well, I want to thank everyone for having me here with you today. It was a pleasure presenting to you. I hope you took something out of what I shared with you, and look forward. Thank you, Philip. A big old applause. Thank you. Thumbs up. Yay. Thank you, Ken. Okay, well, it was a pleasure. Thank you. And I look forward to presenting to you some other time. Have a great evening.
Thanks a lot, Rosy. Take care.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot,
Bye-bye,
everybody,
everyone.
for attending. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.